me,
man.
and
We just don't see him.
shoot.
So,
Yikes. I'm glad she's okay. Yikes.
yeah. What's right, Kevin's not gonna be physically.
Correct.
She's on.
No,
Okay.
I'm watching on high.
I'm talking from
He's the-
above.
I'd like
big
to call
eye.
the meeting to order and ask for roll call. Sue?
Charles Blacklands,
Here.
Kevin Boyles,
Here.
Tom Hagelin,
Here.
Ruth Nelson,
Here.
Bob Nystrom,
Here.
Jana Shogren.
Here.
All present. Let's stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. While we're still in the COVID protocol, I'd just like to state to the audience that due to the current federal and state emergency declarations, the Minnesota directive to residents to stay at home, and guidance about limiting person-to-person contact due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting of the Brainerd School Board is being conducted in accordance with Minnesota statutes 13D.021. Persons may monitor this meeting from a remote location by watching on YouTube Live. This meeting is being recorded. Access to the recording will be made available on the school district's website as soon as is reasonably possible. Next, we will look at approval of the agenda as amended.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first by Director Shogren, second by Director Blacklands to approve the agenda as amended. And it says roll call here.
Right, because we have one of our members, Director Boyles, is on virtual.
Oh.
We need to do all of our action items by roll call this evening.
Okay.
So,
Sue, please.
Kevin Boyles,
Aye.
Tom Hagelin,
Aye.
Ruth Nelson,
Aye.
Bob Nystrom,
Aye.
Jana Shogren,
Aye.
Charles Blacklands.
Aye.
Motion approved unanimously. Next, I'll call on Superintendent Larson for district recognitions.
thank you, Chair Nystrom. It's nice to be here this evening. As everyone remembers at our last board member meeting, I talked about that it really was a fabulous February. And as you're going to see tonight, there's a lot more things that are going on that are making this month really fabulous. And even though we know that our year has been just a kind of a crazy year mixed with distance learning, hybrid learning, and online learning, we are just so appreciative of the additional effort and time that everyone has put in to make our school year a success. Our students, our staff, and we're going to hear from some of them this evening, our parents, our community members, but also the Board of Education. It has been a much more difficult year this year to make sure that we're doing everything that we can on behalf of our children and to provide the highest quality learning possible. Well, tonight it is an honor to begin a week of celebration on your behalf. February 22nd through 26th, Brainerd Public Schools is joining public school districts throughout the state of Minnesota to celebrate School Board Recognition Week. This is a time to honor the work that you've done, the time that you've committed to our students and to high quality instruction, and our commitments to educational excellence for all. So tonight at your places, there's a plaque with a certificate of appreciation for your service on the Board of Education and some little chocolates that you get to eat as well during the meeting even.
Well, thank you.
To say thank you for being so sweet and for helping us through this incredible year, not only this year, but every single year. And so at this time, I'd like to give the Board of Education a round of applause for your dedication. This being said, as I shared, it has been an interesting year and it's taken everyone. And this week is also Transportation Week, February 21st through the 27th. Governor Walz has proclaimed this week as Bus Driver Appreciation Week. And so this year, our drivers have done extensive amounts of work as well to accommodate all of the distance learning on their buses, the different challenges that have been brought forth to all the drivers that we have, and we want to thank them as well. Because without them, so many of our students would have no means to get to school, to and from their homes. Not to mention that they are the first people that our children see when on their way to school each day, and they're the last school representative that they say goodbye to each day when they leave. And so we want to take this time as well to extend our appreciation for all of the bus drivers that have committed themselves and dedicated themselves this year and every year to ISD 181. Can we give our bus drivers a round of applause as well? In addition, the Brainerd Knowledge Bowl teams, as we talked about at the last meeting, had some huge successes prior to the last meeting. Well, we're talking about them again tonight. They've competed at their second meet of the year, and once again, they walked away with first, second, and third place. Their competition this time included over 28 teams from Crosby Ironton, Little Falls, Long Prairie Gray Eagle, Nevis, Pine River Bacchus, Royalton, Wadena Deer Creek, and Pillager. Our three teams scored 55 points, 51.5 points, 48.5 points, with Little Falls taking fourth place at 47.5 total points. They have been informed that 4 teams will be advancing to the state from our region, and so we're crossing our fingers that we're going to be one of those teams. So let's give those kids a round of applause too. And that's all I have tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all for all you do. Thank you.
And on behalf of the board, I want to thank you because, recognizing people takes time and effort, and we appreciate this.
Good.
We serve to serve children, and it's just nice when we're recognized. So thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very deserving. You're deserving of so much more, but it's a little token to say thank you.
Okay, next we will have the public input part of our meeting. We follow board policy 206. I won't go over that, but we do enforce a 3-minute limit for each person speaking.
There's no public comment for this.
Okay?
Oh, okay,
We're good.
okay. Next we'll have approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting on February 8th.
Second.
We have a motion by Director Nelson, second by Director Hagelin, to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting on February 8th. If there's any discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Roll call
Roll
again.
call.
Roll call.
Sorry.
Tom Hagelin,
Aye.
Ruth Nelson,
Aye.
Bob Nystrom,
Aye.
Janice Shogren,
Aye.
Charles Blacklance,
Aye.
Kevin Boyles.
Aye.
Carried unanimously.
Okay. Next, we'll approve the revised regular board meeting of January 25th. Number 14 indicated in red.
I'd be happy to talk about that.
Okay.
As we were preparing with our community task force to look at the Performing Arts Center and to go through the process of naming it, I was double checking the minutes from the last board meeting, and I found that there was a major error in it. And it said that it would be the project oversight team meeting, and it said that it would be on the 12th of February. And it was actually Monday, the 15th of February, and it was the Performing Arts Task Force. And so I'm just asking to clarify those minutes, because with the project oversight team so active, I want to make clear that it wasn't that team that did that work.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
Yep.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Hagelin, second by Director Nelson, to approve the revised regular board meeting minutes of January 25th. Any discussion? All those in favor? Sorry, Sue?
Ruth Nelson,
Aye.
Bob Nystrom,
Aye.
Janice Shogren,
Aye.
Charles Blacklance,
Aye.
Kevin Boyles,
Aye.
Tom Hagelin.
Aye.
Carried unanimously.
Thank you. Next, we will look at the consent calendar and presentation of additional bills. Is there a motion?
I move to accept the consent calendar, presentation of additional bills for payment.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion by Director Blacklant, second by Director Sjogren, to approve the consent calendar as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Bob Nystrom,
Aye.
Janice Shogren,
Aye.
Charles Blacklance,
Aye.
Kevin Boyles,
Aye.
Tom Haglund,
Aye.
Ruth Nelson.
Aye.
Carried unanimously.
Thank you. Next is the presentation of the COVID-19 update.
Not. You know how to get it on here, Heidi? It's not on. Oh, there it is.
Yep, and then just hit present.
There we go.
And then just,
How's that?
you want Aaron and Emma to wait?
Yeah, ooh, ours will be quickly.
All right, so good evening. We just have a quick little update here. Now let students returning to school. So these are all of our students that were returning to school back on the 16th. And then we'll let Superintendent Larson talk about Governor Waltz's update from last week.
All right, last week on the 17th of February, you probably heard that there was a big announcement for the state of Minnesota. And it was really exciting to know that because of the data that we had within our own school district, that we were ahead of the curve and ahead of a lot of the school districts in the state. And this is just a synopsis of the work of the update that Governor Walz made. Early learning had to be the students had to be at least 3 feet apart from one another. That was strongly recommended. For middle and high school level, they were asking that the kids be 6 feet apart whenever feasible, but a minimum of 3 feet apart when they return to school for in-person learning or for hybrid, either one. When staff are providing direct services that are close, they're asking that we use precautionary barriers between students and staff. All of these items, which we were able to accommodate when we brought our kids back. We were asked to make sure that we had appropriate spacing and traffic flow outlined in our buildings, and we were able to accommodate that as well. And particularly in the high school, when many of the ninth graders hadn't even been in our building this year, and when our kids went to distance learning in November, that the whole layout of that building has changed during that period of time. And so it went very well, and the kids accommodated and were really excited by the changes that they saw. Also, county level data is not the only piece of data, again, that we should be using for determining what the model is going to be, which is what Brainerd had done. And we were also looking at the school level transmission data and staff capacities. And so we were really fortunate with all of these pieces that were part of the plan. Many of the schools still were only able to get back to a hybrid model, and we are really fortunate that we were able to bring our students back in a modified in-person. And today, actually, what a great day. Every single student in our school was back in school today because the whole high school was able to show up at the same time. So it really was a great day. If you change the slide, just a couple of things that made it so that our kids could come back. You'll notice that our data points have really gone down. We only have 2 student positives. 32 students are in quarantine. But that's because we have 1 classroom that's in quarantine, and so 14 of them come from that class. And 4 of the staff of the 9 that are in there come from that 1 classroom. So as soon as we can get that classroom back, you're going to notice that we really seem to have this under control at this time. With athletics at this time, we have no students in quarantine. The on-site saliva tests are available in each of the schools every other week, that they're available if wanted. And the vaccination status, we will continue to work with Essentia, GuidePoint, all of the pharmacies, the local public health, and MDE to ensure that people who want to be vaccinated have access to the vaccinations. And so, I've said it so many times, but we are so fortunate with our county. and how beautifully they have taken care of our school district to make sure that we could get to this point where we bring our kids back. And so it really was a celebration when our kids were already back and people are looking at March. And so we're really thrilled about that, and we hope that we're going to be able to maintain that. And so I'll turn it back over to Angie.
So this is a graph that we've been showing every week, and as we can see, the numbers still continue to go down. Last week, 18.43 was recorded for case numbers. They're approximately going to be about 20 this week, so that number will come out on Thursday. So as we continue to see this go down, is what helps us with, once it gets to 10 and below, they say that, you know, we can even increase the social distancing in the classroom, like having them, that barrier doesn't apply, but we will continue to keep that going so we can keep those numbers down. Post-vaccination quarantine, this came out last week with updated guidance from the CDC, and MDH adopted it. That has indicated that school staff will not need to quarantine as a close contact if all of the following apply. They were exposed occurred at least 14 days after the vaccination series was fully completed. So that means after you get your second dose of the vaccine, Johnson & Johnson, their one dose goes to FDA approval for this week, so we'll see where that takes us. The exposure is within 90 days of their final dose in the series, and they do not have symptoms. If they do have symptoms, then we are asking them to quarantine and test. At this time, we're not requiring staff to inform us of their vaccination status, but in order to be exempt from quarantine due to a close contact, they'll need to voluntarily share that information with us. And then just looking ahead, we continue to ask the public to help us keep our students in school, continue to wear your masks, social distance, wash our hands frequently, and avoid large gatherings, and stay home when sick. If there's any questions?
So I know we don't have a definitive number of how many staff have gotten the vaccine, but do you have any kind of an estimate?
I don't, and I actually reached out to our local public health today, but was unavailable to get a hold of them. So as soon as I can get that information, I was hoping to have it today.
Okay.
For at least some approximate of residents in the county, as well as if they can give us a staff number.
So the two that were COVID positive, were they from the high school or the middle school?
They were not, and I was actually able to link these ones to a family, So out of the ones that we've had quarantine, probably about 90% are linked to like a mother and a father that tested positive or a sister that tested positive. So there is a link to them being from the family exposure.
Okay.
But they are not from the high school.
This is really exciting, you know, that all these kids have come back and, you know, there haven't been many COVID positive cases.
Correct. Yep, even from the beginning, you know, we've had pretty low cases, and again, I was able to trace a lot of them back to a family exposure.
Any other questions?
Well, next, we're going to get to hear from a student and a staff member to
Oh,
talk
great.
about what it's like to be back. So,
Okay.
so we have Emma True or Erin. Are you guys going to do it together, or how's it going to go?
You can go first.
Okay.
I think she wants me to practice.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
No.
Should change screen. Can you hear me now?
No?
Erin, you can just use the one on the table.
All right. Hi. I won't touch anything. I'm Erin Carlgard. I teach third grade at Lowell Elementary, and thanks for having me tonight.
Yeah, welcome.
So I wasn't exactly sure what to share about the elementary COVID experience, so I thought I'd just share a couple of my thoughts that have happened in the past year, and if you have questions, feel free to shoot them at me when I'm finished. So I feel like we as a whole have learned a lot in the past year. It's crazy to think that it's been that long. Last spring, when the educational world was thrust into a format, we were never taught how to facilitate that format, so we've really had to grow and learn and adapt a lot in the past year, and what a great model for our kids on adaptation and resiliency. So it's been great, sometimes with success and sometimes with room for improvement. This fall, though, after assessing what worked and what didn't work last spring, we really were able to put into place a plan of action for distance learning, which of course we needed to utilize. At Lowell, that meant that during distance learning, our students were with us in Google Meets from 8:15 in the morning until 1:30 in the afternoon, following our normal school schedule. So if they were in math for a half an hour mini lesson normally during the school day, they were with us online for a half an hour mini lesson, and then we stayed on that whole time to facilitate questions and help where kids needed more help. While teachers led the lessons in small groups, interventionists and paraprofessionals were also available if they weren't assigned to emergency care to support students needing additional help, which was wonderful. Right when we came back to in-person learning, we were able to complete trimester assessments. And like a good data nerd, I loved it because it really let us dive and see what our data showed us about how effective our distance learning instruction was. Just like with in-person learning, we found that attendance during distance learning was essential. But for those students that were regularly attending their distance learning classes, we found at Lowell that they grew over distance learning, which was awesome to see. It didn't hinder their growth. It was amazing. This is in part because of the fantastic partnership with our parents and the persistence and dedication of our staff. And we know that distance learning was a huge burden for families, so we're so grateful for their support. Now that we're excitedly back to in-person learning, I think I can speak for all of us and say that we're very relieved. It's a big sigh of relief to get back with those kiddos. And truly the best education comes through the relationships that we build in the community that we have together in our classrooms. So we're very thankful that our community helped lower our numbers so that we could return to in-person learning, and we're really excited to finish our year together. So.
Anyone have a question?
Yeah, I have one question. You talked about attendance.
Yes.
Was attendance more difficult in the distance learning than?
There were some discrepancies with families. I'll speak from my experience, families that had maybe some challenges with attendance in school, also struggled out of school. Okay. I think some of our families from lower income households also had some concerns because parents have to work. Yeah. And they did the best they could. And so the first thing I told my families when they came back was, this is not a catch-up. Your child is not behind. You did the best you could. They did the best we could, and we go from there. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Emma True. I'm a senior this year at Brainerd High School, and I'm also the president of Student Council. So between distant learning, the hybrid, between moving from the distant learning model to the hybrid learning, all the way to starting back into person this week, I believe that all of you guys have been doing everything that you can, and you guys have made it as great as it could possibly be. I know that everyone's gonna have issues with distant learning and just not being able to log on without the access to internet, but I think you guys, the teachers and the district, have been super flexible and being able to adapt to different opportunities that the students can take part in to enhance their learning this year, and so they can learn as much as they can. Based on my opinion, and I had the opportunity to ask other students around the high school what they thought of like this whole distant learning thing and the hybrid, and starting this past week. They all agreed that they really like the freedom of distant learning, although they haven't been able to have the socialization aspect towards going back to school. However, there are a few differing viewpoints when it comes to asynchronous learning. A lot of the students that I talked to did not like the fact that they had to join a Google Meet when they still had to complete the homework. So they decided that, a lot of them said that they would rather just be assigned on Google Classroom, saying what they have to do throughout the day, rather than just having to sit on Google Meet for an hour. And so, based on last week, I had the opportunity, although I was in hybrid, to be at the high school every single day in the morning for student council, because we have been trying to make sure that the students know that there is light in the dark, and that coming back to school is actually a good thing, no matter, even though like our freedom is kind of taken away, because we're back in person. But I saw an overall trend. All the students that I saw had huge smiles on their faces. They were super excited, and it was super cool seeing my peers be excited to come back to school to learn and everything, and just to see teachers and to be active in the learning community. However, within all that happiness, there are some complaints regarding the loop in A Commons. I have heard many comments regarding being late to class and not being able to, they would be tardy because they wouldn't be able to get to their classes on time because of following the loop. I know you guys, that's what the CDC says, but there are just a lot of comments regarding that. But overall, I just want to thank you all for doing your best and just trying to make this school year the best we can, especially as seniors. We really appreciate seeing some type of normalcy going on, even though it's this late in the year. And yeah, just thank you for everything that you've done.
Any
Thank
questions?
you. Yeah, I was just gonna make a comment, actually, just thank you to Emma, you and the student council group. I have a 9th grader, and so it's very new to him, and having only been to school a few times in the fall and then coming back and the building looks different, he commented that there were a lot of helpful upperclassmen around the building to help, so thank you for that.
Yeah, it was super fun because we got to make signs that say, ask us for help. So a bunch of the kids on student council, we wore our shirts as we passed out candy, and we had huge signs so students were able to find us. And so if they needed to ask help, they were able to. So, thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Well, that was great to hear that perspective, both from a student and a teacher. And I just want to thank the teachers who have worked so hard during this process. You know, we talk a lot about the frontline health workers, and, you know, the teachers are right up there too for wanting to get back in that classroom in front of their kids and make sure these kids get a proper education. And we are very grateful to the teachers of our district. So a lot has been asked and you have produced, so thank you. Next up, we have the Native American Literacy Update. Erin Karlgaard.
You get me twice tonight. I don't know if I should apologize for that. But I came prepared so I wouldn't be long-winded. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about this project, where it's come from and where it is now. 2 years ago, as part of my master's work, I reached out to Tim Murtha and Heidi Hahn, hoping to address some needs of all of our students to be exposed to different histories, stories, perspectives, and ways of knowing. Specifically, I wanted to develop more resources or curate resources that included Native American culture, history, and experiences into our classrooms. Ultimately, the goal of this project was to authentically infuse Native American culture, history, and stories into units that we already are teaching in our rooms, to add meaningful experiences, not removed from everyday lessons, but a valuable part of them. So this project is for all students in our community. During the scope of this project, I completed research around ways to build curricula that effectively represents the complex culture and history of Native tribes. This inclusion is one researched recommendation that helps address achievement gaps seen in Native American populations by acknowledging experiences and voices, as well as seeing each individual's culture in daily instruction. More broadly, this inclusion provides more robust, well-rounded education for all of our learners. In my master's research, one theme that emerged was the ineffectiveness of hit and miss representation, meaning a teacher would drop everything, teach a lesson relating to Native American topics, and then resume with normal programming. The academic effect of this methodology is generally as meaningless as a complete lack of cultural representation in classrooms. When our program began, our state standards were sparse. A handful of standards for core instruction existed, 4 or 5, and that's really all that were mandatory for elementary grades for core. This is improving as our state rolls out updated standards, including the new ones for science that are rolling out. But the reality is that they're still insufficient to help us close those gaps by providing meaningful and continual cultural representation in our classrooms and lessons. So I began this project by researching effective buckets of instruction that present well-rounded representation across curriculum, including societal contributions, historically significant events, culture and stories, and government civics topics, based on work of researchers from other states who have successfully implemented similar instructional plans. In March 2019, I began meeting with Ashley Ingebrigtsen and then met with the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee in May that year, and spent a couple of hours in discussion about our hopes and dreams for what every child in ISD 181 would experience before they leave our schools. Through their wisdom and experience, we created our own buckets. I think they're even better than the ones I researched, based on the responses of their discussion, to include these umbrellas: Native accomplishments, economics, occupations and contributions, connections between humans and the environment, including our symbiosis and traditional harvests and uses, identifying and classifying tribes by geographic location and unique tribal culture, life of American Indians before European contact, tribal government and sovereignty, and historically significant events. Within the context of the K-4 experience, I then identified and purchased materials that meaningfully addressed these topics and ideas and focused on resources that were written or created by Native authors. Once materials were gathered, I met on several occasions with APAC members to read through each of the resources and vet them. From there, Ashley, Crystal, Sam, and I worked with a team of teachers and literacy coaches to read through materials and think about where they may be embedded into units that we are already teaching. For example, lessons and materials can be embedded into a unit on families or one on communities, a heritage unit. It can be learning about code talkers, astronauts, or Olympians in a heroes unit, or learning about local Ojibwe and Dakota Lakota star stories in addition to the previous standard of Greek constellations and science. The work of this team was then shared at the District Curriculum Coordinating Council last year. Books were purchased for CCC members to read so that each grade level can decide how these pieces can be effectively used in instruction. And this work is ongoing. COVID kind of put a tamper on it for just a little bit, and now it's picked up again. To wrap up why diverse representation is so important, I'll share a story from a week ago in my class. To commemorate Black History Month in my classroom, I've been reading books each day that touch on Black history from pre-slavery to modern contributions and leaders. One day, the book I read was about how Native American tribes assisted in helping slaves escape to freedom. One of my students, who happens to be Native American, pumped his fist, yes, when I mentioned this, and beamed as I read the book. His focus was intent for the entire book and discussion, because he saw his people as the heroes in this story. All students should see themselves in the lessons that we teach and be inspired by our instruction. We are all better people when we learn and grow from each other's experiences and histories. Thank you.
Thank you.
So was there any, did you find any, was there any umbrellas for Indigenous students themselves that might be high flyers as it relates to reading?
Tell me more.
I appreciate the work on the American Indian curriculum, and it's really important to have ourselves represented in our reading and that type of thing as well. But through that, my question would be is, did you also look at not just the Indigenous culture, but did you look at the Indigenous student as reader as well?
This focused pretty primarily on the resources, adding the resources to our units, and not so much on individual readers. But I like the idea.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'd love to talk more about it with you, Charles, sometime. That'd be great. Any other questions?
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Thank you for all your efforts. Next, under new business, we're going to have the presentation of the Blueprint 181 project update with Damian Williams and crew.
Good evening.
Hi, Damian.
Hi. ISD number 181, Brainerd Public Schools Bond Improvements Update, February 22nd, 2021. Our agenda includes project updates, high school South Campus updated budget, and then the high school South Campus bid recommendations. With that, Scott Whitmore, if you want to give a quick update on your projects.
You bet. Over at the high school North Campus, Area 2, we've got terrazzo finishing up. We've got a small section that's poured out. We should have that wrapped up this week. As far as pouring it out, then we will get it ground out, and we'll wait till just before occupancy and then do the final grind and polish. In the auditorium, we've got all the framing finished now, working on getting the last of the sheetrock hung. We got painting going on, architectural stone, railings going in, electrical components, theatrical rigging, all that fun stuff. So it's I'd say probably 80% of our workforce on site is focused inside the auditorium. In Area 10, which is the pool, we did just start setting precast. So as everyone's aware, we lost about a week and a half due to the extremely cold weather and not being able to operate a crane. And last week, Wednesday, we finally got a good day to make a pick, and the crane broke down. So we lost our jib sensor, and it took about 3 days to get the part in. So we didn't get to sitting precast until Friday. They put up six pieces of precast on Friday, and they finished out the rest of the north wall today. Down in Area 6, our curtain wall for the CTE wing for the Area 6 Commons is complete. It's installed, it's caulked out. We are continuing with work on the inside of the CTE expansion, so the fax labs. We've got ceiling rig going in. Once that's complete and we get our mechanical finishes in place, we get the floors completed, and then they'll start setting casework within about 2 weeks. Area 8, we are finished in that area for now. So the travel has been poured out. All of our islands are in place. Ceramic tiles in place. And the next time that expands is when we open up the CTE wing connection. Over in the Area 7, we are continuing the expansion. So now that we got the north wall of the pool set, we can pour out the rest of the concrete, which will be the future fax lab, fax classrooms, business lab, business classroom, and the engineering / makerspace classroom. Any questions on North Campus? So here's a couple good pictures. That's them actually grinding out the terrazzo on the north end of the Performing Arts lobby, and our wing wall on the north wall there. And you can see they're setting some architectural stone on that north wall as well. They're gonna be wrapping up that stone by the end of this week, and then all we have left is the fireplace. So there's the south wall. You can see stone's complete now on that side of the wall. We've got ceramic tile going in there as well. That started today. They've only got about 5 days of tile work to do, and then we'll start doing Marlite, prepping for Marlite, and vinyl wall coverings. South Campus, project update. So updated budget in your board book here. You should see the updated budget, which consists of the construction contingency, soft cost, general conditions, reimbursables, FF&E, asbestos, and the new total from what we had started with, and then the addition of the Sourcewell funding to that as well. Any questions on that? Hearing none. The bid recommendations, in your board book, you will have 2 bid recommendation letters. The first bid recommendation letter is for work scope 1, which is the civil, work scope 2, which is general construction, 4, which is the electrical, 6 is the glazing, 7 is the fire protection, 8 is the flooring, and 9 is the acoustical ceiling tiles. The total of those contracts, $9,056,591.78. We'd be looking for approval on those. And then the second bid recommendation letter with all the associated backups is for work scope 3, which is the mechanical work scope, and then work scope 5, which is the roofing, totaling $4,403,900. Any questions on those bid recommendations? Hearing none, that wraps it up for North and South Campus. We would be looking at for board action on the 3 South Campus items there, the updated budget request, the recommendation letter 1 and recommendation letter 2.
Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Scott. lots of work happening by many at the high school and a lot of work to come at South Campus. Warrior Early Learning Center is wrapping up. We completed the B-Wing punch list walkthrough. We're wrapping up finishes in the large motor room and the center hub. And then mechanical and electrical systems are operational and we're working on final cleaning. That building is looking really nice. Any questions on that?
I drove by today and there were a lot less vehicles there today than there has been in the past, so I'm assuming it must be near completion.
Getting closer to the finish line for sure.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's quite a transformation. It looks really great. Garfield Elementary, we're completing the phase 2 schedule and the phase 2 material procurement. The gym expansion documents have been sent out as a proposal request, and we should be getting pricing here in the next week and a half. So more to come on that, but just getting ready to go for a busy summer 2021. Lowell Elementary, demo is continuing in the lower level. We're working on saw cutting and plumbing undergrounds, and we're looking to get the infills installed here at the end of the week. So they've been using the silent concrete saw, which means the actual motor's quieter than a normal motor. I don't know that. If you ask Todd, I don't think you'd say it was silent, but it is a little better technology. So, and you can see in the pictures the huge blocks of concrete that they've found under that building.
Wow.
And then Riverside Elementary, planning for our busy summer again. Met with the city and the fire department to review early access areas, just looking at means of egress and making sure that the safety of the building users is top priority. Material procurement is taking place and is being coordinated with everyone, the contractors. So again, just getting everything ready to go for summer 2021. Any questions?
Anyone? Thank you, Damien.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Can we put Kevin on there so he can be on there? Is that possible or not?
Yeah, I mean, that would be nice. Yeah, we could
Yeah.
see Kevin. Hi, Kevin.
Perfect.
We'll try it.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so we just had our presentation of the Blueprint 181 project update. We are now going to go to item 10. This is to approve the revised budget for the South Campus Level 4 remodel, not to exceed $15,774,823 as presented.
Chairman Nystrom,
Yes.
is this the appropriate time for me to make a comment?
I wonder if we should have a first and a
Take the
second.
motion
We have to
first.
take the motion first, Kevin.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll move that revised budget, and I just want to emphasize that we're requesting our contractors and consultants and our district administrators to find as many financial efficiencies as possible since this came in a little bit high.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. We have a motion by Director Nelson, second by Director Sjogren, to approve the revised budget for the South Campus Level 4 remodel. And now we will open it up for discussion. Kevin, do you want to start?
Okay, Chairman. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you, Chairman.
Mm-hmm.
I would echo Director Nelson's comments too, that obviously for those of you that maybe aren't intimately aware of the details of the bids that came in for the work on the South Campus, they came in over the original anticipated budget. So I thought it was important that we give, transparency into that as we go forward with this vote tonight. And I would also say this, that as a freshman board member, I'd kind of hoped that it would be a couple more months before we had a significant vote like this that I had to take part in. And I realize that sounds a little whiny, given that the four of you who are veteran board members have gone through a heck of a lot more than this in the past couple of years. But I wanted to make sure that at least the public understood, what we had to wrestle with here before we take this vote, and to explain why I think it's critical that we vote in favor of this facility upgrade for a couple of reasons. One is to make sure we secure and make the most of the $5 million plus grant from Sourcewell. And the second is because although when I was running for school board, one of the themes that I brought up in several discussion forums was that, teachers teach kids, buildings don't teach kids. Facility wise, I can't think of a facility that we're working on in our district that is more critical than this one is. This is a level 4 special education facility that's going to provide much needed services to not only kids in our own district or students in our own district that are at the highest level of needs from a special education perspective, but it's also going to open up those programs to people from surrounding communities as well. And so I just want to voice my support and explain a little bit more for public's edification on, kind of why we're there, and to remind everybody that because as Director Nelson said, we've got people looking into finding ways to trim it as much as possible, given the bids that we got, and that as the result of the work that we're going to do and that we vote on tonight, if we vote in favor of it, is not going to cause people's taxes to go up. With that said, I'll turn it over to Chairman Nystrom and open up for other comments from other board members. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Boyles.
Yeah, and one other thing I would like to say, just to follow up on what Director Boyle said, is that many of our other projects have come in under budget, and so this is not going to impact our overall budget. It's going to use up more of the dollars that we had free, but we still are well within our $7 per 100,000 that we had in our original bond. We're still there. So, and I agree with Director Boyles that this is a really important project for those kids that we really want to help and give them a good facility to learn in, good and safe facility. So.
Yeah, and I would like to reiterate, a lot of this increase in the bid was due to unexpected increases in material cost. The contractors that bid this project did their best to keep the bids low, but they cannot control the cost of these materials. And if we delay this, material costs could continue to go up. We could actually have a larger cost. The other thing, if we rebid this, we're going to have an issue with the fact that we have to redraw all of this to present in a second bid process. And that's going to cost money. And we're not talking like $10,000 or $20,000. This is going to be over $100,000 to redo that. So that's over and above what the cost is already. So I just think it really behooves us to support this and ask administration and the contractors to work in harmony to be able to control costs wherever they can. And I know Superintendent Larson, you are very set on making that happen. So that's all I have.
If I could, I'd like to make a couple comments. For our community, a lot of people don't know that there's committees that meet, and so we don't get into a lot of the detailed discussion in our board meetings at times. And one of those is our project oversight committee meeting, which I'm a part of, so I have the opportunity to get into the details, and I apologize for not being able to make last week's meeting. This is a project that I can't rank this school to be of higher priority than any of the others. They're all very, very important, very critical to our students' success. So I would not want to be in a position saying, well, this one of all of them needs of higher priority. The concern I have with this, and I voiced this a few weeks ago, is the original budget was about $8.3 million when we went to the voters. And as recently as October of just last year, so 6 months ago, we had a revised budget of about $11.5 million. And then someplace I'm missing another number that it escalated then up to 13 million. Or a little bit over before we put it out to bids. And now we're just shy of $16 million. And in my opinion, this has nothing to do with, materials is part of it, but being in the manufacturing business, very close to steel prices, very close to other materials, that's a portion and a small portion of it. I think our contractors did bid it as tight as they possibly can, but we designed something that was way out of the league of what I think we should have done. And I realize that we keep honing in on this $7.50 or whatever it is per 100,000 residential home. But, you know, we're far in excess of $205 million by the time we get all done with these projects. And I'm just concerned that every time we go and on something like this is not a time to say, well, instead of building at $8.3 million or as recently as 6 months ago, 11.5, let's just go ahead and we'll keep it a little under $16 million because we have the money. And I see Reed here, and I'm concerned about our ongoing long-term facility maintenance budget. And it's my understanding that if we can save on money, that some of that money would have gone into that reserve fund, which I think we desperately need that. So I'm incredibly disappointed that we go from a 8.3 to almost twice that in something that, again, the contractors did what they could do. We asked them to bid this project that had amenities that are not that they're excessive, but 6 months ago we said we could build $11 million building, or a couple of years ago, you know, an 8.3. And if we can't spend 8.3 or 11.2 or 13 million and transform that school into something that would be state of the art for an education, then I think we're missing the whole boat. So I cannot support this at all and won't as presented. I wish we would have gone back to the drawing board and said, we need to scale this down, we need to redesign it. I realize that there's additional architectural fees, but we're also told, and this is not the first time this has happened, well, if we go back, we're gonna have these additional fees. And to me, it's like, we've got to stop the spending. And this is a classic case of, well, the money's there, let's spend it. And I look at our state government and I look at our federal government, and in this case, I believe we're doing the same thing. We're saying the money's there, let's spend it. So I just wanted to voice my opinion that I won't support this.
Thank you, Director Hagelin. Director TC.
Director Nystrom, do you mind if I add something quickly?
Oh, for sure. Go ahead, Scott.
Just wanted to, so just to clarify a few things. So the original construction budget of the project, as Director Hagelin had mentioned, was $8,300,000 and some change there. But the overall soft cost of that project was $11 million, which was earmarked during the referendum. And that was prior to receiving the additional $5.2 million from Sourcewell for this project. So, you know, when the design consultants initially looked at that and said, all right, we have the additional $5.2 million from Sourcewell. What does this building need to be at? That's when we were looking at about $11,458,000 in construction costs, not inclusive of the soft costs of design and general conditions, reimbursables, FFE, and things of that nature. So, you know, keeping the project consistent with the lower $8 million construction budget at $11,458,000, that's where that updated budget's coming from. So that plus the additional soft costs.
So I have a question, a follow-up question on that, Scott.
Yes.
When the Sourcewell funding was approved or, basically sent to us, were there any strings attached in terms of what the facility has to have or not have to qualify for that funding?
I was not personally involved with many of those conversations. So I can't give you an
Okay, thank you.
accurate answer for that, unfortunately.
I can add to that though, Kevin. No, there weren't. But Sourcewell has generously given $5.2 million to 4 different entities for level 4 programming throughout our region. Little Falls, Wadena, Walker, and now Brainerd School District level 4 program. And that's why this was earmarked for the Lincoln Education Center.
Thank you.
There's just such high need to find educational spaces for these kids, and Sourcewell has just put a real commitment to meeting the needs of our level 4 learners in our state.
Director Teasy, would you like to add anything?
I think it's pretty well. I think they've obviously you guys have talked about all the major points that we tried to address as we went through this process of receiving the bids and analyzing all of them. And ultimately the decision is yours on which direction you'd like us to proceed with this. And yeah, there's nothing else that we haven't talked about already.
Okay.
Am I right, being new to the board table, am I right in thinking that we have approved projects within this scope in the recent past that were over budget? This wouldn't be the first over budget project in terms of any of the schools? Is that correct? So we have set a precedent for
Right.
approving.
Well, not of this
over budget.
magnitude.
Not of this magnitude, sure. I'm just trying to get up to speed with where we've been at before.
And others being under budget as well.
Right, yeah.
Are we ready for the vote? Sue?
Janice Shogren,
Aye.
Charles Blacklance,
Aye.
Kevin Boyles,
Aye.
Tom Hagelin,
No.
Ruth Nelson,
Aye.
Bob Nystrom,
Aye.
5-1, carried.
Okay. Thank you, Sue. Next, we'll go to item 11, which is approval to award the apparent low bids for the South Campus Level 4 project for work scopes 1, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, and 9 for the total amount of $9,056,591 to the identified contractors as recommended in the bid package recommendation letter. And we're going to first vote on work scopes 1, 2, 4, 6, and 7.
8 and 9 as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, 8 and 9 also.
Yep.
And we'll do that with one vote.
I will move approval of work scopes 1, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, and 9.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion by Director Nelson, second by Director Blacklance for the approval of the apparent low bids for the South Campus Level 4 project, which are work scopes 1, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Is there any more discussion? Hearing none. Sue?
Charles Blacklance,
Aye.
Kevin Boyles,
Aye.
Tom Hagelin,
No.
Ruth Nelson,
Aye.
Bob Nystrom,
Aye.
Janice Shogren,
Aye.
carried 5-1.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to item 12, which is the approval to award the apparent low bids for the South Campus Level 4 project for work scopes 3 and 5 for the total amount of $4,403,900 to Thielen, as recommended in the bid package recommendation letter from the construction manager, authorizing Superintendent Larson to execute the final contracts as presented.
So moved.
Is there
Second.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion by Director Sjogren with a second by Director Boyles to approve work scopes 3 and 5 to Thielen Heating and Roofing for the South Campus project. Is there any discussion?
Chairman Nystrom, I will abstain from voting due to conflict.
Okay. So Director Hagelin will abstain. Roll call, please.
Kevin Boyles,
Aye.
Ruth Nelson,
Aye.
Bob Nystrom,
Aye.
Janice Sjogren,
Aye.
Charles Blacklance.
Aye.
Carried 5, unanimous.
Thank you. Next, we will move on to presentation of the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee, APAC concurrence vote. And we have some people that we know from the past who will be speaking. Some familiar faces. Thank you and welcome.
Behind the mask. Faces behind the mask.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was like, how do I run it? So these are just people that are watching, is that what? Do you have a PowerPoint?
Yep.
We're just gonna talk.
They're also on, yep. Yep.
Okay.
I'm just gonna place these here and then we'll talk about them.
Thank you.
Are you going to tell us what it is?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So is this mic on too, or are we sharing?
Do we have 2 mics? Is that what's happening?
That other one should be on too.
Or is it this one?
This one's on. I just
Oh.
didn't know what that was.
Testing, 1, 2?
Yeah, you're hot mic.
Hot mic, all right.
All right, well, I'm Amanda Small. I'm a parent on the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee, and I've been on our board for, I don't know, a few years.
And Buju, Niju Gabawikwe, Nindigo Ojibwemong, Minawa Govinda Budro, Nindijana Ka Jaganashimong, Gawababi Ganikug, Nindunjaba, Migazi Nindudame. And I am also a parent volunteer on our American Indian Parent Advisory Committee. So to start things in a good way, what we offered you today is a SEMA. This offering is made any time that we are asking something of importance. Tonight, this offering has been made on behalf of the Indigenous families and families of Indigenous children throughout the district, asking that we remain open to hear the messages, perspectives, and voices that will be presented tonight and throughout the next year. Our interest is not only to help the Indigenous students in the district, but recognize that there is a benefit to all children.
Miigwech for opening a seat on the District Advisory Committee for a member of our American Indian Parent Advisory Committee. We hope to see that position filled and sustained.
Miigwech for agreeing to provide DAC, the District Advisory Committee, with implicit bias training for the members on an annual basis.
Miigwech also for having, for providing the structure of the DAC membership. And we hope that the district will work towards the foundations of meaningful consultation with APAC and with DAC.
Miigwech for having administrators participate in the MDE self-assessment rubric. We hope to have discussions regarding disaggregating data, or the aggregated data, and comparisons of the APAC's results on that rubric.
Miigwech for school board member and Indigenous parent Charles Blacklance for attending the APAC meetings. We recognize that his commitment to equity in the district is strong and personal as well. We would love to see others make the commitment and outreach.
Miigwech for supporting Aaron Karlgaard's work that you were updated about in tonight's meeting. The passion that she brings to developing curriculum and resources to bridge Indigenous visibility and creating space that allows our committee, that allows our history and representation to be present in the classrooms in Brainerd. The committee has noticed and values this work for all of our children.
So last year, the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee offered to the board and leadership 7 gifts of cloth as we envision those pieces of cloth working towards building a collaborative quilt that is cared for by the district. Each square representing the essential components of the district's responsibility to Indigenous families and children in upholding federal and state obligations and meeting the students and their unique educational and culturally related academic needs of the American Indian. In acknowledging this discussion last year, we come as representation of our committee to discuss the heavy hearts of the Indigenous parents and parents of Indigenous children in the district. The sense is that we have sat with these pieces of cloth and that can build a beautiful quilt of representation, reflection, and compliance in the district, but that the materials alone do not make this happen. The committee had 4 essential goals that were designed for 1 year of progress to begin bringing these pieces together to orchestrate a stronger future and support for our children. To assess our district's progress, our committee again used the Office of Indian Education District and School Self-Assessment for implementing Indian education, that rubric. A copy of it is available in your packet, and the committee also reviewed the progress on the 4 recommendations from last year. Pardon me. I read your part. Excuse me. Based on our assessment, got this power. Using this rubric and the review of the progress on recommendations, our committee has unanimously voted the district non-concurrent. A vote of non-concurrence is a vote of whether the district is compliant with the statutes and meeting the needs of the Indigenous students. Although we do understand that the rule is not related to progress, with little to no progress towards recommendations, the district will never achieve concurrence with statutes and meeting the needs of our students. This understanding moving forward puts an extra emphasis on meeting the recommendations from year to year. The parent committee will continue to use the rubric as a tool for assessing the district's progress in achieving and maintaining concurrence in the years to come. We reviewed these recommendations with an eye toward the pandemic and felt that all the recommendations last year could have been considered.
You will note that some of the recommendations that you have before you reappear again this year, along with some additions, we hope, with aid, the success in completing our goals to support Native American students in the district.
So this year's recommendations are as follows. So our first recommendation is to have some structured and meaningful collaboration between APAC and the district. We have discussed with concern that the request to collaborate may need some structure and ways to ensure that this collaboration occurs and is meaningful. The committee is made up of all caregiver volunteers, to which it is none of our full-time jobs to ensure the compliance of the district. Our heart and passion are there to help the district work towards this to the benefit of our children, and that guides this recommendation. So our hope and the recommendation that you have before you is that the district should work closely with APAC for context and successful implementation of our recommendations. And we'll take it on us, to invite the district to strategic meetings at regular intervals with specific topics surrounding those recommendations so that we can better collaborate on those.
Our second recommendation is one that we have had for the last couple of years: data for context on achievement gaps. APAC requests that the district begin this data recommendation from 2019 to 2020. As it is noted that these recommendations from last year have not been addressed. All these data requests should be considered in ways that are equitably and responsive to interpreting small data sets to create meaningful change. So I'm going to read those recommendations, and they are based on the rubric on part 6, data-based decision-making. So A, the district should create methods to provide accurate student data counts for disaggregation, including a way to unpack the multiracial category for better identification of American Indian students. B, the district should disaggregate by race, student satisfaction rates, special education placement, dropout rates, attendance rates, and graduation rates at least yearly, and reflect on the impact of these rates on that population. C, the district should consult with the disciplinary incident report specialist at the Minnesota Department of Education to develop accurate methods for considering racial proportions in discipline. D, the district should consult with the special education specialist that works with disproportionality at the Minnesota Department of Education on how to accurately figure racial proportionality in special education. For 3 years in a row, the committee has made requests regarding data on Indigenous children in the district, in particular, data that helps to bring to light and explain achievement gaps that are very real. This is an important part of defining understandings that we can each use this information to produce change. Instead of gathering this data and working with the Department of Education resources, the committee has been responded to in a variety of seemingly evasive ways. We are volunteers, but we are also intelligent volunteers. It is disappointing to see year after year the data being used in a variety of ways that will never achieve the committee's request. Here's a rough summary of the responses provided to the committee over the last 3 years. 3 years ago, the district director of teaching and learning responded to the request by presenting to the school board in a next meeting, negating the committee's request and recommendations, to which the Office of Indian Education had to step in to educate the district's practice on how these proceedings are supposed to be handled. This represented a discounting of our concerns. 2 years ago, the committee was given a statement that although the district recognizes the potential for concern, our district has determined that there is not a significant concern, since our children, although not achieving at the same rate as their non-Native peers in the district, are performing better than the averages in the state. This represented a minimizing of our concerns. This last year, the committee was given a list of data sources that would not be available due to the pandemic. There was some consideration for the data that could be looked at, but no work with the committee to disaggregate and view on a yearly basis to be able to utilize the information to create change. This year could have been a great opportunity to review historical information since the data has been minoritized opposite of prioritized for far too long. And instead, it seems nothing was done. The district stated that they would assess the impact of distance learning and the effectiveness of the district's response. That data would have been supplemented by distance learning stakeholders, surveys of staff, families, and students. This information, if completed and disaggregated and shared transparently with the committee, would have been a positive start. We are not aware of this occurring. This represented a lack of regard for our concerns. From this point forward, we would like the data and the information on Indigenous students in the district to count, to be prioritized, and to be transparent.
Our third recommendation has to do with professional development for faculty and staff. Our Native Education will create additional programming for employee development centered on American Indian students and culture. And I'm going to read that again just because I think it came off a little muddled. That Native Education, meaning us, will create additional programming for employee development centered on American Indian students and culture. It is noted that the district implemented broad training for staff, but none of that training specifically is dedicated to Indigenous students, nor are all staff members included in those trainings. So our recommendation is that the district should require all faculty, staff, and administrators to complete training on a regular basis regarding work with American Indian students and understanding culture. And we pulled from the rubric under the area of educator effectiveness. And full implementation would look like my district, school, or tribe offers regular training for staff on working with American Indian students and understanding American Indian culture, and that all staff have participated in that.
Our next recommendation has to do with the MDE self-assessment rubric. A, the district should familiarize itself with the rubric and complete the self-assessment. B, the district should meet with the APAC to review the district and the APAC assessment scores and discuss ways to collaborate to improve the scores across the district and reach full implementation of the indicators. C, the work of completing this rubric and engaging in collaboration should include the school board, all district level and building level administrators. So this rubric is a repeat of last year's recommendations with the addition of the school board members. It is noted that the district responded last year that this work would be completed and that a meeting to collaborate would occur before the vote of concurrence and non-concurrence. This did not occur, and it is important to consider this work cannot be done in isolation. It requires us to work together and have dialogue on perceptions and program improvement.
Number 5 has to do with our Native American education staff. So it's recommended to expand staffing from 2 part-time positions to 1 full-time Native education coordinator position with benefits that are contributed by the district, and the other part-time Native American student liaison position. The part-time position needs to be filled currently, and this support is important to our Indigenous students and families. Oh, am I in the same one? Pardon me? No.
Wait a minute. Okay. Then I think our last recommendation here is about policy updates. And it's A, the district should work with the APAC to update policies that impact Indigenous students, for example, tobacco policies that right now I think we are violating by the gifts that we gave you, which were traditional offerings. And policies for smudging, which I think that there isn't a policy against this, but there could be, and we smudged in our hallway right now today before this meeting. These practices have important cultural implications for many Indigenous children and families and should have a responsive place and an understanding in our schools. This has several places within the rubric that this is represented, but mainly under educator effectiveness, collaboration, communication, and professional development that includes collaboration with tribes and American Indian community agencies to identify policies and practices impacting American Indian students' performance and attendance. And then number 13, staff awareness of policies and practices that impact American Indian performance and attendance. And 14, formal support for tribal policies and cultural practices.
So to close, as you can see in the rubric and our recommendations, there's a lot of work left to be done. And this is with a heavy load. This is a heavy load for volunteers like ourselves and our committee and 2 part-time American Indian staff to shoulder the burden alone. Being compliant with the statute requires a whole district commitment. Therefore, once again, we are asking the school district to make a wholehearted commitment for district-wide support of this work, which includes the school board, administration, teachers, paras, and all support staff throughout the district. Each of the pieces of the material will have to come together to support this development. It's really the only way that the quilt will become a reality. Thank you so much for hearing us today.
Could you explain, you talked about the use of tobacco and also smudging. Could you explain to us what that means in your culture and why it's so important to have it here?
Right, and so there are nearly 600 federally recognized tribes within our nation, and I think that the last that we had checked, I think there were a representation from maybe 20 some within our district. And so that can differ in a way from tribe to tribe, from family and community to community. But for many of our Ojibwe communities, that is the way that we begin anything that's really important to us. That is the way that we go to our elders to ask questions. That is the way when we're going to start something really important, we would make that offering. If we're going to need extra support or help with something and need somebody to listen to us in a good way, it's the way we do something in a good way. And then practices around using like traditional medicines like sage and sweetgrass, those practices are really important in the sense of like cleansing an environment, of making sure that you're in a balanced place, right? And these are things that shouldn't be restricted for many of our children or our families in particular, or as a use within our schools. It should be safe places within our schools for that to happen, so that if a child comes in after being smudged down by their family to come to school, that there's enough familiarity that we understand what that is and what that isn't. Because some of our kids get really misinterpreted, and some of our families get very misinterpreted when they come from their own traditional practices because of the lack of knowledge by educators and others within communities that don't reflect us. And so what we're looking for is that we create policies that allow those things to happen in a way that our kids will always have access to that, and it doesn't get exploited within our schools. But it is a place that if they come in and they need that they should have access to that. I hope that answered your question.
It did. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
You also implied that we dropped the ball in regards to a data request. Superintendent Larson, could you address that? I'm not sure why we wouldn't have provided that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the request is that wasn't addressed.
Charles, do you know? Can you address that?
Well, part with the data that's requested, part of it involves the board taking an active role in providing that information, but also helping to be able to process that information with the APAC group as well. The practice that's taken place is that information would then be handed off to a person like Tim. And the clarity on that is that we need to be able to be active part of that as the board and not disseminate it or not hand it off to somebody else, and then process that information with APAC. That's where the language is that coming from the state, that's where we have to do with them. And so that's the front end piece, but then the information that we're getting at just isn't processed enough to the point where we're able to actually utilize or decipher that information at all. Actually, I think what had happened probably a meeting or a year or two ago was information was handed to the group and then said, okay, go ahead and process it. Whereas the information mentioned or the group mentioned that they're volunteers, they don't have that. They definitely have the ability and the talent to do that, but not something that is supposed to be left to them, but it's supposed to be processed to them and handed to them.
Well, I would like to add to that because it does kind of imply that we're not capable of reading that data, and then I would say that that's a potential. The data that's been provided for us is statistically not even accurate, So where you could have across the board, the representation of special education is exactly the same throughout the entire district, every building, every grade level. That is not possible, right? So I've had people, last year I spent a lot of time on the data that was given to us that I addressed last year, that we're looking at it from the state level at MDE through their special education, through their disproportionality areas. And I'm going to tell you that nobody thinks that data was the right kind of reports or that it was accurate information, including a statistics teacher as well. These kind of things are really concerning because we are volunteers. I shouldn't have to track down whether or not our district is giving us accurate information, right? Or I shouldn't have to go to other resources to say, something's not right about this. Can you help me understand this? If our relationship and our data that was coming towards us made sense, then we would have a much more transparent strategy towards our data, right? And we can actually have conversations about it, but we've had a number of years, including, and I hate to bring this up, but I served on that district advisory committee a number of years ago, and one of the pieces of data that was given to us, and nobody else seemed concerned about it besides me, and this is why it's important that there's other lenses on those teams, is a white, uncomplicated student report. And I'm going to tell you, nobody else in this state that I've ever talked to has a white, uncomplicated student report. And That report was given to the district advisory committee with no other, like, how are white complicated students? What defines a complicated and non-complicated student was the first question I asked. That means whether or not they're in special ed, whether or not they're free of reduced lunch. That complicates things, apparently. None of the data on, our Native students was included in that, our Black students were included in that. None of the data on the complicated students that are white were included in that. It was just, this is our largest number, so this is what we're gonna focus on. And that's the kind of practice that I'm hoping across the board that we can work together to make sure that we're making better decisions. Because as long as that data is invisible to everybody, including the district advisory committee, our parent committees that are really asking for this collaboration, then we will never be able to make meaningful change. And that's why we keep coming back. And it's not an implication, it truly is where we're at. That data is not available to us, and I'm not sure that it's available to you.
And sorry to keep adding on to things, but I think that happens in a couple of different areas. So what Govinda was sharing about special ed students,
right.
But also in just how we identify our students. So I personally have 2 kids in the district. Both of my children are biracial. One is white and Native, one is white and Black. But when she's identified on Skyward, she is in some areas white and Black, or he is white and Native, but then overall, he's just considered white. So when we talk about disaggregating data to get accurate reflections, both of my kids on those forms put that they're biracial or multiracial. So then how is my son included in the Native count if he's included in this count? And so what students are we missing because they're in these other groups? And so that's part of what we need to break down, because otherwise we just can't get the accurate visibility and reflection of our students, because some of them are just getting missed.
And this is a conversation that we've had before. I think you've heard me mention about this data and having the need for context to the data. And sometimes, on some levels, understandably so, there's just large populations of white students and not as large a population of Indigenous students. So then we kind of get grouped together into a group that is identifiable or measurable. But we need that context of information or of that data to be able to do what Amanda's referencing.
Mm-hmm. And there are strategies, and that's specifically for the last 2 years that we've been asking for, is the strategies that you can look at small population numbers. Sometimes that means gathering together several years of data, so that we don't keep getting, well, there's not enough students, you can't look at that data kind of conversations, because that shuts down what actually is happening with our students within the district. One thing that we know identifiably is that there's an achievement gap, right? And so we need to have context in order to be adequate partners to actually resolve some of those issues. And some of these areas are places that those opportunity and achievement gaps can exist.
And then also, the important piece here that I'm taking from this presentation is the request not just for these items of information, but just as importantly, the relationship between APAC and the board. And what continually happens is, understandably so, that's the way processes are in a school district this size, but that's not meeting the needs of APAC to simply disseminate that or to provide that work to somebody else. So there needs to be, or what they're requesting is that relationship between the board and APAC. Not somebody that we're appointing to be a representative to meet with APAC, but an actual representation of this board. Mm-hmm. And it can't just be me, because that puts me, though I'm on the board, I'm also a parent. So I can't play both those roles. I can be on the board and be part of that process and relationship, but just like Govinda mentioned earlier, there needs to be other people at that table other than myself.
Right. And I think that why we chose to even ask you to do the rubric is because it familiarizes each of those people of the responsibilities of the district. And when we talk about, you know, why statutes are not, you know, laws and statutes are not about best practices, they're about bare minimums, you know? And so if we're not even making that progress towards what the bare minimums are, we're going to have a long ways to go. And so each year, these recommendations, we've really designed them in a way that they can make sure that that can be done within a year, you know, so that when we come back next year, that's all progress and we can move on to the next recommendations. There are recommendations on that rubric that we wouldn't even dare to recommend. You know, for instance, trying to hire, you know, diverse teachers, because some of these things that come before that create the foundation to making sure we maintain an environment that diverse teachers want to come to and want to stay in.
Director Lynch, if I may, I don't, thank you first of all for coming. I think this is the third year that I remember of the report. I appreciate that, and it certainly sounds like we're letting the group down. And I'm not going to pretend to even follow all the details and everything that was shared. I would suggest and recommend, I'm concerned about, I think I read in here that you're expecting a response in 60 days by April 22nd, something like that. And if we just do the same old thing like we've been doing, we're going to have the same kind of results. And I would suggest we find one issue to work on per quarter, or one opportunity to work on per quarter, and not muddy the waters with an overload of different things we have to do. I'm very confident that whatever data has been provided is 100% accurate based on what's been put in. And so, because we have, there's a lot of information, but the data is only one thing. Relationships is another piece, and I don't remember everything else, but I would suggest that we just pick one thing to work on per quarter and report on it. Otherwise, we're going to be in the same boat next year where we haven't made progress, and I don't even know where we're trying to make progress, other than relationships, which, you know, I know the staff well enough that they're open to, I mean, there should just be, if things aren't right, that conversation should happen then, not a year from now. You know, we should be able to work openly on all of this. But it seems like we've maybe have overcomplicated. There's so much here. I think there's so much here. I can't follow it all, but if we just we just choose one opportunity.
So I appreciate like the one issue per quarter, as long as it covers all the issues that are on there, because there's a reason why there's so much there is because we had to take last year's recommendations and carry them over, since some of those recommendations had not been considered during this last year. And so that does complicate things, and the committee spent a long time wondering, do we just submit the same recommendations? But that means no progress at all. And so we chose to add to those recommendations in good faith.
And I'm suggesting that we'll repeat the same thing.
Yeah, typically
If we look at one opportunity and we don't wait a year and we report back within a quarter on it, or we're gonna have the same results.
And that's one of, like, the first recommendation really actually comes out of that discussion, because we started looking at, should we be inviting the district to come? Or should the district tell us we're ready to come? You know, like some of these like, how do we communicate kind of things? And so, you know, we have been willing to start looking at our structure. We meet monthly, that we could, or we meet bi-monthly, that we would maybe meet monthly and have the district or representatives come and actually work on one targeted issue on that during that time. Because all of this requires us to have collaborative relationships on this, because there isn't a way for the district to do this in isolation. There really isn't, because there's all of these kind of questions about how is this important, you know, what does this mean, that you have a wealth of knowledge within this volunteer parent committee that can really provide strong foundation moving forward. But that structure of how we communicate between each other hasn't really been provided to any of us. And the district doesn't have a long history of doing this work either. And so that's what we're kind of saying with that first recommendation is let's get a structure and a way of being around that is culturally responsive to the committee and the volunteers that are on it, but also allows us to actually get some work in progress done, because our kids are sitting in classrooms right now or sitting in distance learning right now, and it matters to us. This matters to us, and we want it to matter to others too.
I think I would add to Tom's point where we would maybe take and schedule some of these things out. It also helps to have that column on a rubric of who's responsible. And granted, yes, there's a collective responsibility, don't get me wrong, but the rubber has to meet the road at some point, and there has to be a person or a committee or a group of people, right, who are responsible for looking at how might we collect data differently? How might we begin scheduling staff development? You know, there've got to be people who are already responsible for that, so can we also try to embed some of these things naturally and logically where they belong? And I don't have the answer for that right now, but I think that would be a good place for us to start.
I agree.
For me personally, I also agree with Director Hagelin. I think it's overwhelming. And I think, and not to put the pressure on Director Blacklance, but I lean heavily on him just because of his place in the Indigenous community. And so I just highly respect what he has to say. And so I just naturally, lean to you. So if we need to do it a different way, help us. And maybe we could start with that one thing a quarter. We got to start somewhere.
Well, just by organizing that, we're already dealing with number one. And then the fact that there'll be another topic for that, that means that we'll be dealing with another thing. So, it just really takes, I think we are so grateful to have Charles Blacklance on the school board and that representation, but there is also many other people and many other responsibilities, including each of you too, that each of us has a responsibility to make sure that this goes right. And you have people that are on this committee that can be leaned on as well. And that's what we're here for, is to advise. That's what we're volunteering for. And it matters to us that this goes well because it's our kids.
Yeah, totally understandable. So are we voting on something tonight? Or it was just the discussion?
Yes, you have to acknowledge the report and their recommendations, and then because it's a vote of non-concurrence, there's 60 days in which to have a response back from the Board of Education to them and to the state.
Okay.
And that's based on statute. That's not our, we don't say hey, we want a response from you in 60 days. That's based on statute.
Correct.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that we didn't come in with the demand of 60 days, that is what every district would have.
Okay. Well, thank you for presenting. We appreciate it.
Thank you. So you have a vote, or will we leave?
We are gonna, so I'd entertain a motion on this.
What do we, motion on what?
We're accepting a non-compliance.
I can't, I don't understand all the details of it.
What you're accepting tonight is that you're acknowledging that they've given the report. It doesn't mean that you agree or disagree with the report, but that you acknowledge that it's been given and that we have a responsibility as a school district to respond within 60 days and a plan for how we'd like to move forward and address some of the concerns.
I also think that before we do that response, there needs to be another meeting with the APAC group to better understand how we can comply. Because, I think some of the data coming in, I don't know how we desegregate that. When you gave your example of your child, that's they're designated as multiracial. So how do we find all those kids?
Some of that is a Mars issue, which is a problem for how you
I think there's issues like that that are
Mars.
kind of keeping us from moving ahead.
Yeah.
So,
But that's issues in all districts, and many districts have resolved those issues.
okay. Yeah,
And so,
I'm not
and I
saying
think-
they can't be resolved. I just think we need to understand that and accept it. and figure out a process for that.
I also would recommend, like that recommendation that we did on the rubric is all based on statute and what should be happening within a district. And it gives you kind of what it looks like across the board if you are in full compliance of that. That's part of the reason why we asked for the school board to do it this year, as well as administrators, because this kind of communication is quite common where it's like, I don't really understand this. This is not a visible problem to me. I don't know why you're saying that. And then, you know, then it can be contentious. And we're really saying like, this is what we're basing this on. And I think that there is a lot of good conversation pieces when you go through that on whether or not those things are actually occurring. And it may bring a better understanding. We are more than happy to meet about this again, but we don't want it to be a thing of like we're making something up or like this isn't real or right, because that is really important, yeah.
Yeah,
That each of those, that big packet that you have there is the responsibility of the district. And I think it's really spelled out in terms of what it looks like along that progression. The APAC had already done this last year and we updated it this year. There wasn't much updates that we could do on that, which also states, you know, in terms of how are we progressing as a district if we stay stagnant. And so I really think that that practice is going to be essential for us having conversations, is to associate yourself with what is the responsibility in the first place, because that's what we're speaking to, is the responsibility.
And I would say respectfully to the board, if we don't understand what the non-compliance is, and this is what the third year, that responsibility is on us of the board. It's not on the APAC to better articulate it to us or more consistently articulate it to us. We need to take ownership of that. That responsibility isn't just on me. I mean, I'm in the same boat as you with this, that I need to make sure that I understand what is gonna help get to minimizing that or lowering that achievement gap. So moving forward, that responsibility is on us. And I just want to make sure that I'm framing it that way, that this isn't, I don't believe, them coming to us and putting the responsibility on this group to educate us. I would need them to help educate us, yes, but it's not their responsibility to do so. They're just telling us that we're missing the mark.
Yeah, and thank you, Director Blacklands, and I totally agree, it's on us, but maybe it's my simplistic mind. I would just like to see, here's this thing, and here's our goal of what we're going to do to correct it. And that goal, we may not get corrected for 2 years because of the laundry list of things that we're trying to do, trying to change. But what I see here is a duplication of last year and the year before. And so we're gonna vote for a non-conformance and give some kind of report back by April 22nd to appease the state in this case. And what good does it do if we don't actually take some good action and have some good direction on here's how we can start moving the bar. What is the number, what are the top 2 priorities? If there's 31 things in here, what are the top 2 priorities? Let's work on those 2 so we can have some accomplishments instead of a huge list. I'm not asking the question, but.
Right, but we just gave 5 recommendations. We prioritize that as a committee.
And I saw the first one about the strategic collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's just take that one thing. If we can just get some collaboration happening, if it's not happening today.
So before we go too much further down the discussion road, I'm wondering if I can put a motion on the table to acknowledge that we have heard these recommendations tonight. We've been educated about the full, to the extent that we can process right now, we've been educated about the compliance, and we understand that we have 60 days to respond, not to fix everything, but to respond to the information we've learned tonight. I don't know if that was very concise, but hopefully somebody got that.
Okay, so you've made the motion. And is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Sjogren, second by Director Nelson to acknowledge these 3 items. including the non-compliance, and that we have 60 days to respond. And as Director Hegland said, I would love it if we could just start with a couple.
I agree 100%.
Okay.
But I'm very concerned that we're missing the point. The point partly is, yes, the goals or the objectives, yes.
Okay.
But the other piece is that the board is being asked to work with this group to do that.
Okay.
So what it's sounding like to me is, let's hurry up and check the first one off. That's great, but I'm fearful that we're missing the overall point, which is we've been doing it wrong so far.
Okay.
To this point. We don't want to do it wrong anymore. So we need to figure that out. So what I would suggest is we need to have a meeting, and I'm not sure the process of how this works, but the board needs to meet with APEC to figure that out before we even start with that first goal.
It can't work that's our school board meetings, and if the whole board, if you're asking for the whole board to meet with that group, that's school board meetings. That isn't how this is, how it works in the hundreds of different things that take place.
I did say I'm not sure of the process, and I certainly understand that, Director Hagelin. But what I'm saying is the board needs to get there at some point. And we're just going to keep rehashing this every year. And meanwhile, my daughters and my son are going to be caught in that same swirl that Govinda so eloquently articulated earlier. And we don't want that, and I don't believe any of you want that either. But it's an important step. And with Indigenous people, I can't speak for the group, but I can only speak for myself, I guess, is that conversation, that process is more important, at least at this stage, than the actual objectives. We need to get there, we need to sit down. However that is, obviously we won't be able to sit down with all 6 of us just because of open meeting laws, but we need to be able to get there.
Okay. So after this meeting, I will talk with Superintendent Larson on how we can do that process. So we have the motion at hand. We have a first and a second. And why don't we vote on that then?
Tom Hagelin,
Yes.
Ruth Nelson,
Yes.
Bob Nystrom,
Yes.
Janice Shogren,
Yes.
Charles Blacklance,
Yes.
Kevin Boyles.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
I didn't
Thank
even
you.
realize he was there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for your passion.
What would you like them to do with Asuma?
Yeah, so during the daytime, you can just put that whole tie out by a tree or just in a clean spot that won't be disturbed.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Next, we have the presentation of the overview of school calendars. Director Murtha and Superintendent Larson.
I think that I can get started on this while we wait for Tim to come up here. We've had several meetings since the beginning of the new year looking at what next year's calendar looks like, and really had some wonderful discussion about how we meet some of the needs, such as the items that these women talked about tonight, to better meet some of the requirements that we have as a school district. How are we going to be able to focus on the learning recovery that we're concerned about? How are we to provide additional mental health and social emotional supports that we talk about a lot? How do we address the commitment to equity, which we talked about tonight as well? And how are we going to continue to provide professional development and such to our staff and to everyone throughout the district? How are we going to meet the needs of special education? And so just to name a few, we had a whole list of it, but I know we have our attorney waiting to hear from us today. We have brought forth with a small group of people from the district level to talk about what does next year's calendar look like in the following year. And then we also met with many of our union representatives, and we have come up with the 2 calendars that are before you today and that were sent out in your packet. The three things, and Tim jump in at any time, but the three things I think that are the biggest changes, first of all, we're going back to the original calendar that we had. We have put in here 2 district in-service days where we can address some of the things that I just talked about and that Govinda and had brought up just a little bit ago, where we have some district days where we can do some of that all-staff in-service time. Also on this calendar, you'll notice that there are no snow days built in any longer. With the board's commitment to technology, the snow days that we would have would be considered e-learning days or distance learning days because of the commitment that we've made this year and the work that we've done in that aspect. And let's see, we have 2 in-service days. What's the other thing that I'm forgetting, Tim, that was like the big change here?
It was the addition of 2 more in-service days, the designation of no more snow days. There's some standardized language in terms of what's coded blue and what's coded orange.
Yep.
Those were the big pieces. But the key piece I think you've addressed in that we're returning to the original calendar structure where you're beginning after the holiday and then there is a spring break and there's a conventional amount of Christmas time that's been in the calendar year after year after year.
And I remember the thing that it was is since we've changed the number of student contact days to 171.
Correct,
so
the
the state
MOU.
law says 165. And so we're still well above the number that is required for that. And we did have a comparison of several districts, and we definitely had the least amount of professional development days. So we knew that that was probably an area that would be really important for us for meeting some of these goals and objectives that we have. But we need to have a signed MOU from the district and the union about that, and then we can address it when we go into negotiations to determine how that will be addressed. But that was the thing I was forgetting, but.
The teacher master contract indicates 173 instructional days. And what we're proposing is 171 instructional days with the addition of the 2 new in-service days. It just is a technicality that we just need to correct through negotiations. Until negotiations are completed, we would exist on the MOU, which they've proposed.
Yeah.
I have one question. It says packets for primary students will be provided at the start of the school year. Is there going to be no contact on e-learning days with their teachers in primary schools?
No, the intent is to fulfill the statute as it's written where instruction must occur and contact with the student can, but we know we're going to have a population of kids who, despite our best efforts, despite being one-to-one, we just better have something for them just in case.
Okay.
So this is the safety net underneath the statute.
In case they don't have their computer brought home or whatever when a snow day occurs, that there will be educational, that.
We do.
We'll try very hard.
We'll try very hard. Let me give you the
so.
scenario that could play out. The student is absent the day before the snow day occurs. So even though we've anticipated the day because we're watching the weather and we say, all right, everyone send the computers home tonight, if that student's been out for a couple days, they would be excluded from participating if they did not already have picked up their technology. So we want to make sure that there's learning provided for them. So we want to cover all our bases.
Okay, thank you for clarifying
Do we
that.
anticipate calling e-learning days maybe earlier than we would typically call a snow day, for example, so teachers can prepare kids to go home?
It all depends. You know what? The hardest decision you make as a superintendent is deciding if you're gonna have a snow day or not. And it's so funny because if you call it too early, people are upset because it can change overnight, the weather can change. If you call it too late, it makes it hard for families to find childcare and all of those kinds of things. And so what we've talked about is if it looks like the weather is, looking at the forecast and such, we will, as educators, remind the kids, you make sure you bring home your computer because it looks like there could be a snow day on Thursday, but just in case. Or if it looks, we'll look at the forecast as best we can. Calling it later or earlier, that's kind of a catch-22, and a lot of times what happens at night will change by morning. One way or the other. Like the one late start that we did have this year. It said the day before it was gonna be absolutely terrible. We had we called it, and then it never came. And so you just don't know. You just do your best.
And in-person learning is always best, so.
It's always best,
So
yeah.
we want to be careful with that, I think.
Yeah.
The best thing that we can do is be wrong, in the sense that every Friday from November to mid-April, send them home.
Yep.
If you see a snowflake in South Dakota, send it home. Okay, because the worst case scenario is you bring it back tomorrow. Yes, some will forget their kids. That's the way they roll. We have contingency plans for that. As long as it's not all of them, we'll be okay.
And that's the packets that you're talking about. So we'll have some of those sent home, so kids do have things that they need to work on if they forget it.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the 2021 and through 2022 and the 2022 through 2023 school calendars as presented.
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion by Director Nelson, second by Director Blacklands to approve the calendars for the next 2 school years as presented. Is there any further discussion?
Don't tell my kids I seconded.
Oh.
We'll tell them you made the motion.
Yeah.
I thought it was like a motion.
Hearing no discussion, we'll do roll call.
Ruth Nelson,
Yes.
Bob Nystrom,
Yes.
Janice Shogren,
Yes.
Charles Blacklance,
Yes.
Kevin Boyles,
Yes.
Tom Haglund.
Yes.
Unanimously carried.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Director Murtha. Next, we'll go to approval of the MSBA number 300 series policies for the 3-year review as presented. Superintendent Larson.
Yep, these are just renewals of the policies, no changes to the policy.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve.
Okay.
Second?
Okay. We have a motion by Director Hegland, second by Director Shogren, to approve these MSBA number 300 series policies for the next 3 years. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Bob Nystrom,
Yes.
Janice Shogren, Charles Blacklance, Kevin Boyles,
Yes.
Tom Haglund,
Yes.
Ruth Nelson.
Yes.
Unanimously carried.
Thank you. The next thing I think is the fun part of the meeting. This is the presentation for naming of the Performing Arts Center. We had a task force that met last Thursday. Corey leaded that effort. Both Superintendent Larson and myself were part of it. This is really exciting in that this new Performing Arts Center is going to be in our community for at least 100 years. So the name, just think of the responsibility. The name that we picked tonight will be there for 80 to 100 years. And so it's really important that we name it with something that people can recognize, that it has a part of our geographical identity. And I thought it was amazing how our group came to a conclusion. And I should tell you that on that, Corey picked a really good group of people. Okay, I thought maybe it was something else behind me, but we had people like Scott Likens, who has Lakes Area Music Festival. We had the music instructors from the high school, which included Brian Stubbs, Chris Fagerud. We had the drama, 2 people from the drama department. We had community members. We had a CLC representative, Patrick Spradlin, who runs their Performing Arts Center. And anyway, I'll turn it over to Corey.
You're on a roll. I don't
Oh,
feel free.
I was just so excited.
All right. So just a reminder of the process, we posted the form where people could fill out and submit an idea and a rationale for that idea. We put it basically everywhere we can think of, all over the district social media and websites. I believe it appeared in the newspaper, Chamber of Commerce newsletter, just everywhere we could think of. In the end, we had 154 ideas, individual submissions, And the 12 members of the committee reviewed the 54 unique and qualifying names. So from 154, once I weeded out all the duplicate names, the ones that didn't qualify under the policy, there were 54 remaining that the committee members reviewed last Thursday for your consideration. As Bob was alluding to, a couple of really important values bubbled to the surface for the community. One was they wanted the name to be very inclusive about the kind of art that would be on display, which is really all of them. So they wanted to make sure the name really embraced that inclusivity. Simple is good was, even boring, I think, was mentioned as being a positive in a name for this facility. They wanted something very specific to this area and to avoid any confusion with CLC's Performing Arts Center programming. So with those values that sort of bubbled to the surface as the committee was meeting and voting and discussing what they have come up with for your consideration, hopefully this is a good way to represent sort of the areas of variation for you to work through. The committee itself liked Brainerd Lakes Center for the Arts best, but they wanted to give you the option, of course, to add in area if you so chose, or performing in front of arts if you so chose. So I think with those two, there are maybe 4 total options for you to wade through.
And I think how we settled on Brainerd Lakes Center for the Arts, when we start adding area or regional or even performing, it's a mouthful, it's a lot. And we want to make this easy for people to comprehend, that they will know it right away. We know that there's probably going to be an acronym. It could be BLCA. Who knows, maybe it'll be called the Lake. I don't know. You know how those things start. But we just wanted to make it easy, but yet define our area.
Was there a reason you didn't do Brainerd Lakes Performing Arts Center?
Yeah, because Patrick Spradlin from CLC, he said they already have Performing Arts Center in their name, and he didn't want any confusion between the two. And so I really looked at, like Chris Fogarud, yeah. And they said, we don't need performing. As long as the word arts is in it, that's everything. It's drama, music, music, performances.
Another thing that they talked about, and I have heard from a few of you that you thought that the name might not be as creative as we were hoping, and there weren't, nothing really sprang out that was really different to anybody in the committee. But there were some things that people really liked about this name. First of all, they were concerned about a performing arts center if you don't tell people where it is. And they said, we're really proud of the fact that this is in Brainerd. It's part of the Brainerd School District, and it's located in Brainerd. And if people are going to go to a show, where are they going to go? Are they going to Baxter? Are they going to Little Falls? Where are they going? But they know that it's in Brainerd. Mm-hmm. They also said that it was important to them that they know that it's bigger than the city of Brainerd, that it was a school district vote. It was the whole district. It was a whole area. And that's where, do you want to go back to the name? The lakes came, but they said it could be the area as well, or the Brainerd Lakes thought that it seemed somewhat bigger than that. And then the Center for the Arts, they just wanted it to be all kinds of arts, visual arts, plus it's going to be even more than the arts, but that we're very proud of that, and that is what the voters voted on, was a performing arts center in question 3, and that's what it said. So they felt that the word arts needed to be in it, and that's kind of why what's being presented to you is they're all kind of alike, because those were criteria that this particular committee felt was important. Mm-hmm. Correct?
Right, correct.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for explaining that, because I kind of felt when I saw them as, well, we don't
They're all
really
the
have a
same.
decision to make.
Yeah. But that's the justification for why it's so similar.
Okay.
Yeah.
We also did not
Well, again, I
consider,
would say that the explanation was very helpful for me. Because when I talked about it, it was like, well, like to Director Nelson's point, it was, picking between charcoal, gray, and ash. But when you hear the explanation that they just gave us, I think it really crystallizes it. At least it did for me. So I appreciate that very much.
I was also going to mention, we didn't consider names of people. While it might be relevant in 2021, say 30 years from now or 50 years, people will have forgotten who that person is. It will no longer be a relevant name. We want a name that will last for generations and be as relevant 50 years from now as it is today.
And you don't have to vote on it tonight if you want to think about it a little bit. I mean, you have that option that if.
Were there any members on the committee that represented the cities, Brainerd, Baxter, Nisswa?
Yeah, Tyler Glenn
was
from
there.
Bladek was there.
No, I mean like city council, any from the.
Oh, no.
On that note, Director Hagelin, I wanted to also share a concern. Corey and I visited a little bit, or actually I did more of the questioning and Corey answered my question, so she's not necessarily in cahoots with my comment here. But I have some great concerns about the makeup of the group. I don't know individually, except for just now, who that group was. My question, first off, is, and I know the answer, but my question to Corey is there anybody of color on this group? Or anybody from the indigenous population in this group? Kind of in the same vein of what Director Hagelin is this group that's making this decision on this area Performing Arts Center, is it really inclusive for the population that we're saying we want to represent it? So that's a concern of mine, and I'd even say it's even progressed probably more to very concerning for me as we look forward to this particular task force moving forward with this group. I think it's really important that through the name, one level, but also in terms of the information or the talent or the art that is brought through it is representative of this area as well. That's more of a placeholder comment, I understand. But in terms of that particular task force, I would strongly suggest that we have some individuals of color and probably even a person or two of the indigenous culture that represents this area as well.
And we did consider many native names. With their meaning was either Mississippi River or the flow of the river, things that could tie into the geography.
Right. And my concern is that, it might be a little bit different than Director Hagelin, but is without those individuals there, was there anybody really there that was able to provide that, again, context to some of the other names that might have been considered? Or even like a Baxter, if there wasn't a representative there, was there really that voice being included? Now, I know we can't check off all the boxes. That would be difficult and clumsy, I understand that. But I do believe that when it comes to people of color or even an individual of an indigenous background, that's something moving forward that I feel is really important.
Yeah, and I respect that. We did have people that live in Baxter. I've lived in Baxter. We had a couple others. We had someone that lived in Nisswa. And so we thought we had good representation. We had Andrea Rusk, the principal at the high school there. We felt it was just as important to have people that were stakeholders that are really going to be using this facility. Mm-hmm. A part of it, we also had John Erickson, who is our archivist here.
Sure. Yeah, all good people.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
But I would just say I was very nervous going into this. I thought we would get a name that would be, I don't know, it just wouldn't be representative. It was like a flashy name. And I just thought it just all came together because we had a voting process and people got to vote on each choice. And a lot of them, there were only about 10% of the people that thought it should go on to the second round. Even the word Mississippi was not popular, even though, you know, it's right next to the high school. They really wanted lakes because we really wanted Nisswa to be a part of this garrison and all the people in between that are part of our district.
That's good, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think it's, you know, probably, again, another question of transparency and whatnot. Not that it was intentionally not transparent. I think what you're telling us right now is very helpful towards that end.
So I'm very passionate about this, but I really want to get your direction on how we should go. The directive was to Corey to form a committee that would meet and, you know, go over all the names that were submitted, and Corey also managed all the responses that came online. And I thought they were well represented.
Yeah, and I will own, I seconded the whole idea of having the task force work to put this name together. And I'll own that's not something at that point in time I was thinking of. But also speaks probably to where we are as a group as well, just through the lens that we may look through or not look through yet. I mean, I can be that person, but I can't. I'm not an amazing goalie. I can't catch everything all the time, I guess. But.
Quick question. I think Chairman Nystrom, I think we were made aware of these three options via a memorandum. So is this tonight the first time the public is seeing those three names?
It is, yes. Would people like us to?
I mean, ultimately, the decision lies with us to accept a name, right? We're gonna, at some point, we're gonna vote on it. But it seems like maybe, thinking out loud here, the idea of maybe, you know, a little more community engagement around this since they haven't had the chance to see it before might be in order before we make the decision.
I think that maybe if we just hold on making the decision for 2 weeks, just to let it percolate in our minds, and then we can talk to some people if we want to. It's our decision. I don't think we want to go back formally to the community.
No, I wasn't proposing that necessarily.
Okay, but I think it would be good for us to have some time to think about it and let it run around.
I would agree, because Ruth, and this is on me again, is I was looking at it when I saw that that was probably the name and didn't have as much option as I thought we were going to have. So then the only questions that I asked ahead of time was my question about the makeup, not necessarily the name. Although I'm not necessarily philosophically against the name. But now that I have options.
I think it'll work fine. I think we should just give it a little bit of time.
Okay. Yeah, and I just the reason I was asking if there was any, you know, from the city council is because the Brainerd Lakes really stands out to me. And I like, Corey, how you put this on here. And I keep focusing on just the word Center for the Arts. Just the little concern, that, you know, Charles, I appreciate your comments as well, who was on the committee, and you know, Brainerd Lakes and our taxpayers are throughout. So I keep thinking, I look at it as the Center for the Arts. But a name change can always happen too.
So would you like us to table this until our next meeting? Okay, I did do some research on Robert's Rules of Orders, and we have to have a first and a second to table. There is no vote. All we need is a first and a second. And then it's up to the chair to accept that recommendation.
Well, if you don't
I thought if we haven't made a motion.
If you don't get a first, there's nothing. It's going to die.
Yeah, we haven't even made a motion, so I don't think
we haven't done any.
I looked at it afterwards too, and the last time we didn't make a motion either.
Okay.
So it's okay just to let it sit.
Okay,
yeah.
so we're just gonna let it sit. Okay. Good enough.
But thank you for all your work and
Yeah. Thank you, Corey. Great process. Okay, let's see.
Did you look at the handy dandy handout I handed out last fall on Robert's Rules of Order?
Yes,
He did.
I did.
He pulled it right out and he says, I'll read through here.
we used to have a book that we'd pass along to the new chair, but somewhere along the way it got
Yeah.
lost.
Yeah.
Maybe you should buy a new book for the chair.
Our next item is informational, and we'll start with the Equity Task Force update. Director Blacklands.
All right. Thank you for that. We did meet last week, again, as the Equity Task Force, and quite honestly, I'm quite excited about the group. We're going through some, what I see as some very natural phases of a group, an important group. There's a lot of, I don't want to say emotion, but a lot of passion with this group. And as a result of that, we did, first off, what I would say is we're continuing to work the process as a task force. And I think that's very healthy and very natural. And the reason why I want to kind of emphasize that is we did spend a great deal of time in this last meeting just really sitting down and discussing the overall direction of this group in terms of what are we really after, and also how badly do we really want this. And then without going too deep, but just realizing that passion runs pretty deep with all the members of this group. And so we took a good, healthy amount of time having that discussion. And I do believe, and I think some other members of the group felt that even though difficult at times to try to get our bearings as a group and to begin pulling in the same direction, I felt it was one of the more successful meetings that we've had so far. So I'm excited about that. And then finally, the other thing that we talked about was the overall makeup of our task force, similar to what I referenced here with Performing Arts Task Force as well, that what is the appropriate makeup of the group. So that's something that we're still processing. And do we grow a little more? Do we not? A lot of those questions we're still percolating here. And then also, if we do grow a little, what would that look like, and what type of how would we measure that, or how would we what type of tool would we use to determine who we might bring in? So, and we aren't there yet, but we definitely had again some very good conversation, and again just a very spirited and passionate time together as a group. But I really felt that we got to some places that we really needed to get to. I know that doesn't give the group or the community a lot of specifics, but quite honestly, that's what the meeting looked like. And I thought it was very appropriate. And quite honestly, I left there quite feeling pretty good. And I really appreciate Tim Murtha's ability to keep us on task. And even though we throw some curveballs in terms of conversation, which you probably already understand about working with me, that can happen from time to time, but Tim's ability just to keep us on task and moving forward. So I felt it was a very good meeting.
Okay, thank you for leading this charge.
Absolutely.
Okay, next we'll have the curriculum report from Director Murtha.
We have nothing further to add since Ms. Carlgard presented.
Okay, thank you. Next is Business Services Report. Director Lord.
Good evening. In your packet is the financial report, and the general fund is pretty consistent with last year. I just wanted to note for the new board members, you might be expecting to see higher than 50% because we're more than halfway through the year. However, certified, they have July and August payments that come in June, so that's why it's a little bit under the 50%. In the food service fund, payroll is tracking similar to last year, but it is under in the foods just because we are getting so many commodities and donations, which is good. In Fund 4, all categories are pretty much down just because of the difference in services from last year to this year. And then the debt service funds, our payments are due in August and February, so you'll see those are at 100% because there should be really minimal expenses from here on out. And then in the OPEB, the same thing as the general fund, very comparable last year, so nothing really to note. And that's all I have, unless you guys have any questions.
Okay. And you are working on that policy with our fund balance?
Yes, I'm going to update that, and that should be at the next board meeting.
Great.
And then we also did have a MSBA presentation on the gear and ESSER funds, so hopefully if there's more clarification on that, I could, at the next board meeting, give an update on that as well.
Great.
I did find out that you have to spend gears and ESSER 1 before we can apply for the gears and ESSER 2 for next year. So it's making us look at this year differently than we had before. But you cannot apply for those funds until we have used up these funds. So we're looking at, we're being really creative right now, actually.
Why don't they just simplify and just say CARES funds? I mean, why do they have ESSER funds and gear funds?
It's so everything falls under the umbrella of CARES, but then they did this category based on when the legislation pushed it through. And they all have different dates. So.
And then, Marcy, will you, when we get some information from the state, you'll be giving us updates on that too? I know there was some.
So the governor recommended 1, but there is a bill that is 2 and 2, so
And then he also recommended some money for for students being down.
Declining enrollment, yep. Yep, he did put additional funding for declining enrollment as well. But that has not, I have not seen that go through yet.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. I saw the numbers and I thought ours would have been more than what they had.
So we had actually already started that declining enrollment. We were already starting to get that based on last year.
Okay.
So maybe that's why it wasn't as much as you thought.
Could be. Okay. Okay, thank you. Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next, superintendent's report.
I have no further report beyond what we've talked about tonight.
You're speechless.
Well, yeah, and I know that we're running an hour late, so
Okay.
there's nothing that
Okay.
I need to add.
And no report from Brainerd Public Schools Foundation either. There was no meeting. Other than, I should report, it looks like they raised more money than they did last year, which is just amazing with a virtual event. So they were very happy about that. Okay, you see the future meetings in front of you. Our next regular school board meeting will be on March 8th. And there will also be an optional tour of Lowell Elementary on March 22nd.
The March 8th will have virtual ability. Will help.
Yep.
I'll be out.
Okay.
It'll be virtual.
Is there any other business to come before the board? Is there a motion to adjourn?
No, we have closed session.
Pardon me?
We have closed session yet.
Yes, we'll be going into a closed, I'm sorry. So now we have to go into a closed meeting. This meeting will be closed pursuant to Minnesota statute section 13D.05 subdivision 3B for confidential discussion with legal counsel regarding pending litigation.
Move to go into closed session.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Nelson, second by Director Hagelin to go into closed meeting. Hearing nothing, all those in,
Charles Blacklance,
Yes.
Kevin Boyles,
Yes.
Tom Hagelin,
Yes.
Ruth Nelson.
Yes.
Bob Nystrom.
Yes.
Janice Shogren.
Yes.
Okay.
When we shut down, we won't lose Kevin, will we?
You got a plan?
Okay.
We're gonna bring him on in a different way.
Let me know if you can hear.
You're just not gonna show up that night?
Okay, Bob, we're ready.
Okay, so is there a motion to adjourn?
Yep.
Okay,
Second.
okay. A first by Director Hagelin, second by Director Blacklance. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign.
Aye.
Thanks, Kevin. Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Passes unanimously.
That was a signal I could take.